we have everyone who's going to be here, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And we'll, first of all, we'll take attendance. Kiara Moore,
Present.
Jonathan Hurwitz,
Present.
Robert Garrity.
Here.
Michael G. Brian Beachkowski.
Here.
Joyce Terrio. And David Lutz is here. And we're joined by Justin Casanova Davis. The agenda had indicated we were going to go over the warrant with Justin, the warrant and the sort of the initial budget presentation with Justin and Todd, and they're not ready with the warrant yet, so we're going to delay that. But we do have minutes to adopt. And then I'd like to at least sketch out an initial calendar. And actually, Justin, I wanted to ask you some questions about that when we get to that point. But
Sure.
Brian, we have some minutes to approve.
Yeah, and because I wasn't at the last meeting, I do want to just check with everyone before I make a motion. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes I sent out earlier today that they'd like to be in the present in the meeting? No.
No. Thank you.
Okay, well then I'll move that the minutes from February 8th be approved as submitted.
I'll second.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think because they're
Yeah,
remote.
okay, yeah. I'll take a roll call on that. Jonathan Hurwitz,
Aye.
Kiara Moore,
Aye.
Rob Garrity,
Aye.
Mike G. Brian G. Beachkowski.
Aye.
Brian Beachkowski.
Yeah.
And Joyce Terrio. Aye. Vote was unanimous to adopt them as written.
That's right.
Okay, so, Justin, I guess the first question I wanted to ask you, is, you had indicated Todd's away next week, so getting a full budget presentation on the revenue side and expenditure side is gonna have to wait, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And just the governor's budget was recently released, so we're updating the revenue figures. We're going through and sort of taking a relook at our expenditures because there's a little bit of a deficit there. So he's at a financial conference next week. So the following week, we would be prepared to do the warrant and do a budget overview.
We'll intend to have the budget presentation in 2 weeks and go over the warrant at that time.
Yes.
And that will be the 15th, or I'm sorry,
So, no, yes.
Yeah, the
15th,
15th.
yeah,
March
15th,
March 15th, okay.
Wrong month here.
yes.
Great. And then I guess, do you have any sense of when the schools, you said that you didn't have the school's final numbers yet either, right?
No, we don't have that. At least the regional aspect, we should have, I believe they will be voting that week that I said, the week, if we meet the 15th, I believe they'll be voting on the 14th. So we
Okay.
can remove a placeholder and put that in there. I'm meeting with Ingrid on Monday just to give her brief synopsis of where we're at and also see where they're at. But we should be close to as final as possible for that period of time.
Just to let you know, we usually have the two superintendents in on the same night to have them give us their presentations. I am going to email Ingrid and Paul to find out what night might make sense for that.
Okay.
For that, and what we'll try to do is meet consistently on Wednesday through the period where we have to vote on the budget. That's the next question I have for you. I was looking at the calendar you sent, and there's a date that is looming large in my mind, and it is wow. Erica, do you remember what day they were saying they were needing us to have voted on the? Yeah. Oh, it says April 12th for the final written recommendations, and that's awful early for us. That's way too soon for us. That's what it was. And we usually have our recommendations about between 3 and 4 weeks before town meeting. So if I'd known this when we were setting up the meeting a couple weeks ago, so in other words, Without the town meeting warrant, I don't know how many meetings we're gonna have to have. What I will say is that I emailed with Rich McCarthy today. There are 2 planning board articles. And Rich is able to come next week, and Chad, we're still waiting to hear from, but Chad, Peck, who is the chair. And if they can come, we'll.
Have they voted on it yet?
No, but the language is, I'm not gonna wait for them to vote. We don't have time. But when we can wait on voting on it until they finalize the language, and then they can come back and explain any changes they have. So they can come next week and we'll get the full budget presentation the following week. I guess what I'd like to try to do is do the schools the week after the 15th, which would be the 22nd. So next week would be PB planning board, full budget presentation on the 15th, schools on the 22nd, and then and we can talk. I'm meeting with Justin tomorrow. And we can talk about that a little bit more, but we like to have, if there are any major articles from one of the town departments, we like to have them in so we can talk to them about that. Usually that involves, if it depends on what the community preservation committee is proposing. Oftentimes if it's the DPW and they're buying, it's not going to happen at this meeting, but if they're buying significant equipment, or the police department is doing an upgrade to something, for instance, we'll have those folks in. That could be kind of rolled into one evening depending on what it is. But I'm thinking we're going to need at least 4 meetings starting next week, and maybe 5, which would put us at the 3, 4, let me see what that puts that. The 5th of April. Before we could start voting, we'll start. What I would like to do is go back to a practice that we've done in the past, where if it's a non-controversial item, we can vote at the end of a meeting. So that last meeting isn't filled with all of our votes. But there will be some things we'll have to wait until our last meeting, and then we would write the articles and get them in, Jonathan, sorry, I keep doing that. Justin. I apologize. I keep trying to call you Jonathan.
Not a problem.
So does that make sense for you folks right now? Yeah. Jonathan, Kiara, do you have any comments on that?
Nope.
So we would be meeting substantively on articles until April 5th. We may have to have a meeting the following week to vote, which would make it the 12th. And then
What do we have to go to print?
I'm looking at that right now.
I do have to touch base with the printer to confirm when is the latest they can have, when do we have until we get them the warrant, so. I can do that this week so that I have a better idea.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Yeah, well, let's not shoot for that date, but
That's some idea, and I would imagine if voting is on the 12th, yeah, if you guys.
we can turn stuff around in less than a week.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's by the 19th, that's 4 weeks in
Yeah.
advance, and
Yeah, that should be.
The other thing is, if we vote on stuff preliminarily, we should assign that night, and people can start working on their articles that night rather than waiting to do them because this is,
that would.
how many articles do you think there's going to be, Justin?
I think there will be about, I think in the 30 region.
Okay.
I'm going through now, adding a couple, although there's
I
not
Right.
too controversial, but I would say around 30.
That's typical.
And as we know, there's a bunch that are boilerplate that I have
Yes.
saved up in my computer, and I can send them to anyone who wants to write them, but so there's a chunk in the first 10 that are all boilerplate, except for the main budget one, really. And then the CPC stuff, unless they're proposing something controversial, is usually pretty straightforward. So
Is there another bunch of bylaw changes though?
the only thing is, there's 2 bylaws that are being proposed, changes that are being proposed by the planning board. There might be something in the mix somewhere else. One is the sign bylaw. which could be problematic and controversial, and we'll have to see. And one is a bunch of changes, as far as I can tell, to the the table of uses chart that we have, meaning they would be either changing language, and I haven't looked closely at changing some of the language, but maybe also moving things in and out of various districts, which may be controversial depending on what that is. And like I said, I looked at it, and I'll have to listen to Rich and Chad to understand it better. So those are the only two. And the sign bylaw, depending, I think they've heard from the town on a number of occasions about that, so hopefully we have a pretty good proposal. And the other one, we don't know, so. We'll talk some more about that calendar that I just proposed tomorrow, Justin, but does that sound reasonable to you if we get them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
okay.
it sounds reasonable to me, yeah.
Okay.
And also, I'm sure everyone's aware, but just town meeting this year it's a little delayed. Jay couldn't make the normal scheduled time, so it's May 17th.
17th, right. So we're planning on voting more than a month in advance and then writing them and getting them to Erica to be put into the warrant a little bit less than a month in advance. So that should be plenty of time to get the warrant printed and mailed.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Does anyone have any comments on that conceptual calendar there? It's not a concept. We're meeting next week to talk to the planning board. We're having the budget meetings the week after. I'd like to do schools on the 22nd, and then we'll schedule other people for the next two, depending on what's on the warrant.
David and Erica, I just have a question on how we proceed here. In terms of the other departments, I imagine like they're larger departments, or if there's any sort of major changes, you like to have the departments visit.
Yep.
Do you all invite them, or what's the process that you like to?
We do invite them, but we'll keep
Okay.
you in the loop on that, so you'll know that when we're
Perfect.
inviting the police chief or whatever it might be, so.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
you're obviously more than welcome to attend, because we're gonna bounce stuff off you as a result of those discussions, so. Or you or Todd, depending on what it is, have it usually attend those in some capacity. The schools ones, we tend to deal with on our own. And, you know, you're getting the same thing we're getting from them, so. But obviously the departments that are under the town administrator and the select board, we want to make sure you're fully plugged in on our discussions.
I'll always copy you, Justin, on our invites with our agenda, so you can, make a determination if it's something you feel is important to join us for.
Perfect. Thank you, Erica. My intent is I'll be in person on as many of these meetings as possible, but I'll be attending all of them more likely. So, no,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss at this point? Any other business pending before the committee? Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's roll call it, Dave.
What? We never roll call the adjournment.
You don't have to
Just
take
stay in session until next Wednesday. Just don't meet, talk in the meantime, guys.
the vote for adjournment.
Thank you all. We'll see you next week.